Chapter 2 takes a look at psychological methods. We're going to start with Section 1, which is conducting research. Section 1 at a glance. Scientific research consists of 5 basic steps: forming a research question, forming a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, analyzing the results, and drawing conclusions. After the 5 steps are completed, scientists attempt to replicate the results and often ask new questions based on those results. Our main idea: the steps that scientists follow in conducting research are fundamental to reaching reliable conclusions. Psychologists follow similar steps in conducting research. The steps of scientific research. Psychologists tend to use the same general procedure when conducting research. The procedure consists of 6 steps. Forming a research question. The first step is forming a research question. Research questions are best focused on behavior rather than constructs that cannot be seen or measured directly. Psychologists next form a hypothesis about the answer to the research question. A hypothesis is an educated guess. The accuracy of a hypothesis can be tested by research. The next step is testing the hypothesis. The hypothesis cannot be considered to be correct until it has been scientifically tested and proven to be right. Opinions are not considered. Psychologists rely on evidence and use a variety of research methods to test a hypothesis. Psychologists analyze the results after they've tested the hypothesis, and what do their findings mean? The more information they collect, the more complex a task it is to analyze it, and they often look for patterns and relationships in the data. Psychologists draw conclusions about their research question and their hypothesis. When observations do not support a hypothesis, they often must change their theories or beliefs from which the hypothesis was derived. This means psychologists must keep open minds and adjust or modify their hypotheses if their findings make it necessary to do so. And here is the steps of the scientific research: the question, hypothesis, experiment, results, conclusions, and theory. And you always have to go back and redo the experiment as often as you can in order to verify that it is correct. What does a hypothesis occur? Where does a hypothesis occur in the steps of research? The second step after a research question is formed. There's further steps in scientific research. The first is replication. For the findings of a study to be confirmed, the study must be replicated, which means it must be repeated and produce the same results as before. Some scientists repeat a study under different circumstances than in the original study. Sometimes the study is repeated with a different set of participants. If the study involves people, participants can vary in gender, age, ethnicity, social and economic background, and location. Research findings usually lead to new questions. New questions are tested using the same process. Different research methods are used to test hypotheses. These methods include the survey method, various observational methods, and the experimental method. Why must a study be replicated? Give 3 reasons. You can pause here to see if it produces the same results under different circumstances, with different set of participants or different types of participants. Section 2, survey samples and populations. Scientists use the survey method by interviewing people or by distributing questionnaires. Scientists must carefully choose which groups of people they wish to study. Psychologists usually use a survey to gather information about people by asking them directly. A survey is a series of questions people are asked to answer about a particular subject. Psychologists conduct surveys by asking people to fill out written questionnaires or by interviewing people orally. The findings of interviews and questionnaires may not be completely accurate. People may not be honest about their attitudes or behavior. They may limit their responses for privacy reasons, or they may say what they think the interviewers want to hear. How do psychologists conduct surveys? To accurately predict an outcome, psychologists study a group that represents the target population. A target population is the whole group they want to study or describe. The target population includes only people who are relevant to the survey. Because it would be costly and difficult to interview or question every member of a target population, researchers study a sample, and a sample is only part of the target population. What is a target population? Psychologists select samples scientifically to ensure that the samples accurately represent the populations they are supposed to represent. A sample should be as similar as possible to the target population. One way that scientists obtain an accurate sample is to use a random sample, in which individuals are selected by chance from the target population. Another type of sample is a stratified sample, which consists of subgroups in the population that are represented proportionally. A large random sample is likely to be accurately stratified even if researchers take no steps to ensure that it is. A large sample size by itself does not necessarily guarantee that a sample represents a target population. What is the difference between random and stratified samples? Sometimes researchers do not use a sample that represents an entire population. In such cases, researchers are cautious about generalizing their findings. They cannot learn about the preferences of all people by studying only one group of people. They cannot learn about the attitudes of Americans in general if they limit their observation to only men or only women, or to people who live in one part of the country, or to people from one socioeconomic background. What are some limitations on generalizing results? When conducting surveys, psychologists are aware that bias may occur on the part of the respondents. Bias is a predisposition to a certain point of view despite what the facts suggest. Psychologists also are aware of volunteer bias. People who volunteer to participate in studies may have a different outlook from people who do not volunteer. Volunteers are usually more willing to disclose personal information, they may have more spare time to participate, and they don't necessarily represent the target population. What is the basic problem with volunteer bias in terms of research results? Most psychologists today appreciate the need to allow for the wider diversity of members of society in their research. This has not always been the case. For example, men have been included as research study participants more often than women. This led psychologists to mistakenly generalize their findings beyond men. Many research participants were originally drawn from white men. Studies that have included a more diverse population have shown that heart disease affects women differently than it affects men, and that African Americans are more likely to get heart disease than whites. More diversified research on domestic violence has revealed that men and children are victims as well as women. Recent research with members of older populations has shed light on the topics of concern to the elderly. And we'll pause right here, and we'll start up the next video for section 3 and 4.